Welcome to Soil Sessions, a webinar series by the Soil Health Partnership. At this time, I would like to introduce our host, John Mesko, Senior Director of the Soil Health Partnership, to start this Soil Sessions.
Thank you, Stacy, and good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar. We're really excited that there's so much interest in our program and what we're doing. I started as the Development Director at SHP last summer in June, and then in October took over as the Senior Director for the partnership and for our work going forward. And I would just say at the outset here that this project, this organization is something that is in this relatively short time become very near and dear to me. I feel like the work that we do is instrumental for agriculture, for the environment, for food, for everyone involved in that discussion. And my background and my career have been unknowingly pointing in this direction for many, many years. And so to step into this role and to work with this team has been very rewarding. And to have all of you paying attention and being interested and wanting to learn about where we're going is inspiring as well. So thank you for joining, and hopefully over the next half hour or 45 minutes, you'll gain a better understanding of what we're doing and what we hope to do in the future, and look for ways that you can connect with us. So we just finished our 5-year anniversary. We started a little over 5 years ago, and the organizations that came together to fund our work and to establish our project were really focused on, at the time, several key questions. Mainly, what is soil health? If you can think about the kinds of conversations that were happening in agriculture 5 or 6 years ago, soil health was really beginning to gain traction at the center stage of what was going on throughout the country. And there are, just like any new or enhanced discussion, there are always questions about definitions, and what do we mean by soil health was one of the questions that was on the minds of the folks that came together to form this organization. And so we set about to answer that, as well as how do we measure soil health. And I think for a lot of people, the question that maybe at the top of the discussion is, what is the value of soil health to the grower, to the environment, to society? What is the value in terms of ecosystem services, in terms of enhanced profitability on the farm, and so forth? And so Soil Health Partnership set out to conduct research on farms to answer these questions that mainly the industry and many commodity groups had about soil health. Along the way, we have, I think it's important to reach definitions. How you define the terms you work on is really indicative of where you're going to go. And so along the way, we settled on a fairly common definition of soil health, that being that healthy soil functions as a living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. There's a lot in that very short statement, and we could unpack it in detail, but I think that one of the main components there that we'll talk about a little bit later is this living ecosystem. If there's anybody attending the webinar that was in college in the 80s, like I was, studying agronomy, one of the things that we all learned pretty much was that soil is a material for holding the roots of the crop. And we're mainly concerned about what's in the soil solution, that being NP and K, and of course the pH. And our management of that soil is all about the soil solution, even more so than the soil itself. And I think there was a nod at the time to the fact that there are living things in the soil that matter and that help soil to function, but there wasn't a lot of emphasis put on. And I think not only at Soil Health Partnership, but at many of the other groups that are working in this area, I think we've collectively done a good job in highlighting the phenomenal power that is available in the living ecosystem that is in soil. So that's an important piece, and we'll touch on that a little bit more later. But we've also, over that time, settled on a few key indicators that we look at, not exclusively, but certainly important to our work are focusing on organic matter, essentially the carbon that's in the soil, aggregate stability, how does the soil stick together and hold itself when there's excessive rain, available water capacity, how does the soil store the water when it's not an excessive rainfall event going on, and then of course pH and nutrients are important if we're going to have crops be on the soil and productive and growing. So what have we learned? Along the way, we have learned a tremendous amount of information and awareness around data collection and analysis. I don't think, of course, I wasn't here, and I can't speak for those that were, but I think if you want to think about the endeavor, the scope of the work that this program took on, it would have been hard 5 years ago to understand the volume of data and the means in which the data would be collected and the impact of how that would all happen simultaneously across many different farms with many different individuals, staff working to collect that data. I think hindsight is 2020, and if we could have had the luxury of making a plan that would specify specifically how each person would interact with that data, how we would collect it, how we would store it, I think we would have benefited from that. However, along the way, we've learned that we have a valuable data set, and how we deal with it, how we collect it, and how we store it is all very, very important. And so we've actually begun, and I'll share a little bit more about this later, we've actually begun to reprioritize some of our emphasis, some of our resources on managing that data and collecting that data properly so that we can use it down the road. Another thing that we've learned about soil health is that we know it when we see it. By that I mean measuring soil health is maybe a little more difficult than identifying soil health. I think those of you who work with farmers, those of you who are farmers and are out on your fields and experiencing 5 different years of weather over the last 5 years, you know when you have a healthy soil that's processing water efficiently, whether that's in a wet year or a dry year. We know it when we see it moving the equipment across the field and so forth. But actively measuring that based on measurements that we pull from the soil or measurements in relation to management that is done on the farm, that's a little bit more of a challenge, and that's something that we've learned over the last 5 years. We have in 5 years tons of anecdotal information from our farmers about how their soils have performed when cover crops are applied or when they're not, when we have tillage disruptions or when we've reduced tillage. Tons of information about how farmers were able, like particularly in 2019, some farmers that we work with were able to get onto their fields for planting earlier than their neighbors who were in many cases very wet. And the same goes at harvest time. I was with a number of farmers where we were harvesting their SHP plots this fall and last fall, and they were out there, and other farmers could not be out in those fields. And so lots of that information. Now we've also, as other entities, other groups interested in working with soil health have kind of joined this community to identify the impact and the benefits of focusing on soil health in our farming practices. I think we've seen that there's a potential for the way we farm to have a tremendous impact on climate change for the good. And there's a whole host of downstream advantages for many different groups to leverage that knowledge with public policy makers and those interested in how we want to prepare for and mitigate the risk that lies in this rapidly changing environment that we see. And then I think, this is my personal opinion, I think learning and focusing on soil as a living system has been really, really instrumental. And I know that some of you may have heard heard me make an analogy to the soil as similar to the human body. If we went to the doctor with symptoms that needed treatment, the doctor might prescribe a prescription, a pill of some kind. They might prescribe a change in lifestyle, like maybe losing weight or stopping smoking or something like that. And we probably wouldn't reply to the doctor with a question of how much, which one of those should I implement first, or how much benefit will I see from stopping smoking versus losing weight, which is more important, and how should I go about this? The doctor probably wouldn't be able to tell you you're going to live, you're going to gain 3 years of life expectancy if you do this, and another 2 years if you do this, and 6 months if you do this. The doctor's probably just going to say, well, I think you'll feel better if you follow my prescription. I think you'll feel better, and come back in 6 months or a year, and we'll do another evaluation. We'll take some more measurements, and we'll think about what we might want to do from there. And I think, as I was referring earlier, for many years, we've not seen the soil in that context. We've not treated it in that context. We've much more, the way we've treated soil is much more like a car factory or some kind of a manufacturing facility, rather than a living system that is going to react differently to different stimuli at different times, just based on geography and weather patterns and soil type, parent material, topography. All those things are important factors. And so along the way, over these 5 years, I think that understanding that it's a living system, it really helps us to understand and quantify some of the difficulties we've had, and everybody has had, in measuring specifics around soil health. This is just the beginning, and so we are looking forward to the next 5 years. We have extended some of our farmers that have been with us for the first 5 years into another 5-year agreement in some cases, to help us continue to add to that information that we have available to us to make good decisions on farms. So while we may have set out initially to focus mainly on research and collecting information, we have come to understand that our work really encompasses all 3 of these items: on-farm engagement, and that means working with farmers to identify the issues that they want to see changed on their farm, the things that they want to learn about changing farming practices and how it will impact their operation, and then setting out a research protocol that is for them what they need to engage in answering those questions and developing a plan going forward. We have a field team that works with farmers in their area to identify the things going on their farm, as well as share information more broadly in their communities about what's going on. We also have really identified that it's much more than just collecting the information. We've got to figure out the best way to house that information so that it can be secure, anonymous, so that we protect farmer data privacy. And how can we then leverage our partnerships with other organizations across the soil health community so that we can share information, data with them, they can share with us, and we can gain greater understanding about what's going on in those soils. Now, that's a piece that is, we've really, in the last few months here, really begun to reprioritize and redirect resources in that area so that we can be better at analyzing data and sharing data across the whole community. And then the last piece, communications and outreach. In the work that we do, we can have the best results, we can have the best data, but if nobody knows about it, it's really hard to justify what we've done. And so just for the current fiscal year, which started last fall and it's going to run through most of 2020, we have a new communications plan, and this webinar is part of that. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the other things that are coming later on in this presentation, but we've really identified our need to incorporate a robust communications and outreach piece to this, because we have not only data and information, but a story to tell about what's going on those farms. And so it's important that we are able to communicate that directly. So for 2020, we have an important year ahead of us. There's no question about it. We have this data set now that is very robust, and it is growing. And as we collect, also in addition to soils information, we've begun to collect a great amount of management information. We have collected information this past fall on cover crops and how farmers are implementing them. And so we have a lot of information. And we have a well-rounded staff. We'll talk a little bit about them in a minute. But we have a strong component to our staff around agronomics, and these folks are very, very focused on getting to the solutions that we're all after. We have expectations are high for our organization, and we have been growing so rapidly and so quickly to address the concerns across the U.S. and the Corn Belt mainly. And we are now at a point where we are going to have to prioritize our work. We cannot be all things to all people. And so prioritizing our work and identifying our niche within the soil health community so that we can strengthen that and leverage that with our partners. So we think that our niche as an organization really hinges on our on-farm engagement. We have, as I mentioned, 9 field managers that work across the country directly with farmers, helping them learn about and then implement soil health farming practices. It's those field managers that are experts in the field and are experts in telling the story to their local communities as well as on a national level. You'll see them authoring information on our blog and on our website. You'll see them hosting field days and research meetings throughout the year. And these people are, not every organization that works in soil health has the luxury of that staff, and we're very proud of them. And so that's our niche, and that's where we want to focus. We want to be able to leverage that with other groups that maybe have strengths in other areas that we can benefit from, and that we can share with them and they can benefit from us as well. We're in this for the long haul. I think that may be something that is worth pointing out. This is not a collect data and do research for a few years and then kind of tie a bow on it. We have a lot more that we can learn, and we need more years of varying weather to strengthen the value of that data set. So we have set about this last bullet point. It's what I said to our team when we had an all-team meeting just a few weeks ago. So let's set our goals for the year together. I think we have a great community working here, and we want to work together to set our goals for 2020. Our network is represented here on this map. We're located with either plots or data from 16 different states. We have over 200 sites where we have or are conducting research on farms. We have different trial types. We have strip trials, and we have side-by-side trials. The strip trials, we commonly refer to those as partner sites, and side-by-side trials as associate sites. And we're just referring to them as trial types now. But this is the network. As you can see, we're pretty strong throughout much of the Corn Belt. We are beginning to add sites in other areas as funding becomes available. And so our goal here is not to add sites just to have more sites, but our goal is to have sites that are high quality sites that are giving us additional information because maybe it's a new geography or a new focus of a specific crop that they're focusing on. But we want to add those locations deliberately. We'll talk a little bit about that. That's our team. All but one of us are there. John Stewart wasn't able to be in that picture, but that is our team. These are folks that, as I said, are very dedicated and very focused on our work. It's a joy to be on the team and to work with them. These folks are highly educated and very articulate about agronomy, about soils, about communication. Very, very gifted group of people. As you can see from this slide, we have laid out things, geography for the field team on the left. We have really emphasized a science and research team there in the middle. We're actually adding, next week, we'll have a data management specialist joining us to fill out that team, and her role will be developing that database that is accessible and shareable and private as appropriately, so that we can be able to pull solutions out of the data in a more quickly and more reliably. This group, I think, might surprise people to know that there's almost 300 years of farming experience in this group, including many who grew up on farms and have farmed themselves. The group collectively has been to over 15 countries around the world, talking about agriculture and soils and farming practices. This is a very accomplished group, and we're proud to be. I'm proud to be a part of it, and proud to share that with all of you. So I talked a little bit about communication and what you might expect over the next year. There are several things that we want to make you aware of that are available to you. So on the left, the Digging In is the title of our weekly blog. I would encourage anybody who wants to see the latest information that's coming out of our research and our summaries to subscribe. Go to our website, soilhealthpartnership.org, subscribe to the Digging In blog. Whenever we release new information, it'll go there first. That's where you're going to get the quickest access to what we have available. We have a quarterly newsletter that goes out to our farmers, Beneath the Topsoil, specifically targeting the folks that are part of our farmer network. And then this webinar is part of the Soil Sessions series of webinars. And we certainly appreciate everybody on this webinar. If you find this useful, please let other folks know about it, because this is a great way for you to interact directly with us. Stacy's going to be fielding your questions later on, and we'll be able to answer the questions directly as best we can right here on a webinar with everybody online. So I would encourage the use of this widely. I'm really excited about the People of Soil Health podcast. You know, our organization is the Soil Health Partnership, and in developing those partnerships, I have had the pleasure of interacting with passionate and articulate people all over the soil health community. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from the other groups that are involved in this and the people that work closely with us. And so a good bit of the emphasis of that podcast will be talking with the folks that make up the community more broadly, not just people within our partnership, within our organization, but those outside. We've started to conduct some of those interviews, and we'll be doing more, and that will launch in April. And personally, I'm really excited about that, so I hope you'll listen in. But our webinars are a little more detail on our webinars on the right there. Of course, today is the 28th of January, but you can see the other topics that are going to be coming later on in the year. We also are looking for ways that we can release information to you more succinctly and more quickly. We hope to have a summary of 2019 data available soon. We are also looking at publishing some white papers and some journal articles. Again, all of those things will make their way to the blog first, and then if there's interest, we can certainly build those into other communication tools like a webinar, certainly a podcast, something like that. So it all starts on the blog, and I'd encourage you to subscribe to that. A big event coming up in just about a month is the Commodity Classic. We are going to be there in full force. We have quite a display planned for the Commodity Classic this year. Those of you who haven't been, I have encouraged people to go to this my whole career. It is a very eye-opening experience if you haven't been to one. It really gives a feel to you when you attend of how vast the agriculture community is and how many different types of jobs there are, how many different types of folks there are that work in agriculture. How many different things go into building the agriculture community? Just about everybody's represented there, and it's worth a trip for sure. And this year it's in San Antonio, and it's something that we'll be there throughout the Commodity Classic. We have some live sessions. We're going to be talking about the carbon insetting framework that we've been working on with Bear. That'll be on Thursday of Commodity Classic. We'll be passing out some awards, Seeds of Change awards, and then we have learning sessions that we'll be hosting as well. It'll be a chance for people to interact with us directly. Also, our field team will be there and be able to answer questions. We've actually been getting some requests from our partners to have our field team present at their booth at different times to be available to answer questions about agronomy and soil health at their booth. So I'm really excited to take our team down there and really show the whole community how important some of the things that we're doing are to all of agriculture. I hope to see you there, and if you are going, let me know, because I want to greet you specifically. I talked about our goals and our goals for 2020 as an organization. Bring order to the data, the process, and the internal communication. So the data is what we have. It needs to be organized, as I said, in a way that's shareable and useful, not only to us, but to others. But we also have to bring order to the process. We have, as I said, 9 different field managers collecting data. We have many different platforms where that data comes in on. We have many different ways that data actually gets transferred to its final storage space, right? So it's whether it's a thumb drive or an email or whatever it may be, posted to a website, all of that, a web server of some kind, all of that needs to be standardized and set up in such a way that it is efficient and accurate. And a lot of that depends on reducing the number of times it gets transferred. And so that's a top priority for us this year. It's probably the number one thing that we need to overcome as an organization, and we, as I said, we have adjusted our resources to fit that. We also, as another priority, we want to start working from the ground up as much as possible. And what I mean by that is that we've been around 5 years. The National Corn Growers, which we are connected to very, very closely, they've been around since 1957. The organizations that came together to initially fund us and found us have been around much longer than that, some of them. We're a brand new organization, and when you start a new organization, you start with directives from the top down as to how we're going to address the issues and how we're going to carry out our work. But now we're at a point where we have some expertise, and we want the work to be generated as much as possible. It's not going to be true in all cases, but as much as possible from the ground up. By that meaning farmers, funders, field team managers, folks that are working most directly with the soil, identifying and generating ideas, resources, and connections that help us answer those specific local and regional questions. So that's where we want to start and work from the ground up. We are strengthening our statewide and regional strategies. A lot of that boils down to working with the individual state corn groups, and we certainly want to strengthen our relationship there. We're looking to fund our existing work. We have expanded rapidly, and for many, many years, the focus was to obtain funding and resources so that we can expand, and now we need to focus on funding our existing work. And we will continue to expand, but deliberately, as I was saying before, based on location and geography and so forth. Stacy's been really bringing a lot of consistency to our messaging. She's been taking the content that we develop and put it in several different formats so that people can digest it. And so we're going to continue with that. I mentioned the functioning database. That's our new data management specialist is going to be focusing on that. And as we build this organization out for the long term, part of it is, what are our values as an organization? And I can tell you that from our initial conversations, accuracy and competence and customer service are all key values that have been demonstrated so far. And so we want to ground our team in those values and others so that we can be a reliable supplier of information and solutions to farmers and to the soil health community. And we want to, as I was talking about our niche earlier, we want to have a relevancy in the space that is really our value to the farmers that we work with, plus demonstrated impact. How are we able to evaluate the changes in farming practices and their impact environmentally and economically? And that is what makes us relevant, and that's what we're going to be focusing on throughout the year. So, as I said earlier, we're a partnership, and everybody on this webinar, we consider you to be a partner with us because you're interested, and we'd like to work with you if we're not already. We need you to ask questions. We need you to connect, support, and communicate with us. I've got my phone number there. For as many people that know my phone number, I don't get anywhere near the number of calls I would think I would get. My phone number is all over the web. And yes, I do get a lot of spam phone calls. I don't usually answer the phone if I don't recognize the number, but I just put it out there because I want people who are interested in working with us, with me, to give me a call. Feel free to email, and I'll put you in touch with the right person to help us work together, to extend what you're doing, to extend what we're doing, and make it better all the way around. And I'd just love to hear from you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me or to our organization through our website. I am, as I said before, very thankful that you joined us for this. I hope that you have found this helpful. Thank you for your interest in our organization.